Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the large window of his ship, looking out at the enemy fleet that surrounded them. The alien ships were huge and beautiful, with crystal hulls that caught the light and curved shapes that seemed to flow like water. There were 200 of them, maybe more. His own ship, the USS Harbinger, looked tiny and ugly next to them. "They're calling us names on the radio," said Commander Lisa Blake as she walked up beside him. Her voice was angry, but she kept it quiet. "The alien commander thinks our ship is a joke. He's telling everyone that humans are stupid and weak." Jake nodded but didn't say anything. He had expected this. The Zephyrian Empire had found Earth 3 months ago, and they had been laughing at humans ever since. They called human weapons primitive and said human ships were like toys. They demanded that Earth surrender without a fight. The peace meeting was happening at a big space station that belonged to the Galactic Council. All the important alien races were there to watch what they thought would be humanity's defeat. Zephyrians had brought part of their war fleet to show how powerful they were. Jake had brought one ship. "Look at them showing off," Lisa said, pointing at the alien ships as they flew in perfect formation around the station. Their weapons were glowing with power and they moved like they were dancing. "They're not even trying to hide how much they hate us." Jake watched the display and felt tired. He was 55 years old and had been in the Space Navy for 30 years. He had fought pirates and rebels, but he had never faced anything like this. The Zephyrians were older than humanity, smarter, and much more powerful. Their technology was thousands of years ahead of human science. "Sir," called Lieutenant Carl Peters from the bridge. "The alien commander wants to talk to you. He says it's important." Jake straightened his uniform and walked to the bridge. The main screen lit up, and he saw the face of Admiral Kethfer, the Zephyrian leader. The alien was tall and thin, with skin that looked like it was made of crystal. He had 4 eyes that glowed with different colors, and when he smiled, his teeth were sharp, like knives. "Human Admiral Kethfer," said, and his voice sounded like music, but cold music that made Jake feel uncomfortable. "I see you brought your little warship to our meeting." "How cute. My children build better ships when they play with toys." Jake kept his face blank and calm. "Admiral Kethfer, are you ready to talk about peace?" "Peace." Kethfer laughed. The sound was like breaking glass. "No, there is no peace to discuss. You have one ship, one tiny, weak ship. We have 200 of the finest warships in the galaxy. This is not a discussion. This is you surrendering to save your pathetic species." Behind Jake, the human crew stayed quiet, but he could feel how scared and angry they were. Commander Blake's hands were closed into fists. Lieutenant Peters was breathing hard. They were all good people who had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might never go home again. "I see," Jake said quietly. "And what happens if we say no?" "Then we will show you why the Zephyrian Empire has never lost a war." Kethfer leaned forward, and his 4 eyes seemed to glow brighter. "Your stupid metal bullets and chemical bombs will be useless against our shields. We will destroy your ugly ship slowly, then fly to Earth and finish what we should have done. When we first found your worthless planet, the screen went dark." Kethfer had ended the call without saying goodbye. Jake turned to look at his crew. They were 23 men and women who had left their families behind to come on this mission. They all knew the odds were impossible, Sir Commander Blake said softly. "Our spies were right. They think we're weak and stupid. They see the Harbinger as a joke." Jake walked to the tactical display where information about both fleets glowed on the screen. The Harbinger's weapons and armor looked simple and basic compared to the alien technology. No energy shields, no plasma cannons, no faster-than-light drives. Just human engineering at its most ordinary. But Jake smiled. That's exactly what we wanted them to think. The Harbinger had been built in secret over the past 3 months. To outside observers, it looked like a normal human warship, the kind that might patrol the outer planets or fight space pirates. The aliens had scanned it many times and found nothing special. They saw metal armor, chemical rockets, and kinetic weapons. Technology that was hundreds of years behind their own. They had no idea what was really hidden inside the ship's hull. "Lieutenant Peters," Jake said, "send a message to the council. Tell them we'll give our answer in 1 hour." As the crew went to their stations, Jake stayed at the tactical display. He touched the screen where the Harbinger's image glowed. The ship looked small and weak, but hidden in its center was humanity's greatest secret. The aliens thought they understood human technology, but they were wrong. The Zephyrians had made one big mistake. They had assumed that because humans were new to space travel, they were also stupid. They thought that because human weapons were simple, they were also harmless. They believed that because the Harbinger looked primitive, it was also powerless. Jake had been counting on their arrogance. For 3 months, while the aliens were gathering their fleets and making their demands, the best human scientists and engineers had been working on one question: how do you fight an enemy that is stronger, smarter, and more numerous than you? The answer was simple. You don't fight them directly. You make them fight themselves. Commander Blake, Jake said. Are all our systems ready? Yes, sir. The special equipment is online and waiting for your command. Jake looked out the window again at the alien fleet. They were beautiful ships, he had to admit, elegant and powerful, with technology that seemed almost magical. But they all shared one weakness that their builders had never considered. They were too perfect, too uniform, connected to each other. The Zephyrians had spent thousands of years perfecting their technology. Every ship used the same type of hull, the same kind of engines, the same communication systems. They had achieved perfect standardization across their entire civilization. It was their greatest achievement. It was also going to be their downfall. Jake walked to his command chair and sat down. In 1 hour, he would give the aliens his answer. He would tell them that humanity refused to surrender, that Earth would never bow to alien rule, and that the Harbinger was ready to fight. The aliens would laugh. They would mock him for his foolishness. They would prepare to destroy his ship with overwhelming firepower, and then Jake would show them what human ingenuity could accomplish when it had 3 months to prepare for the impossible. The Harbinger might look weak and primitive, but hidden in its hull was a weapon that would change galactic warfare forever. Not because it was more powerful than alien technology, but because it was different. Because it had been designed by a species that the galaxy had underestimated. The Zephyrians were about to learn that in war, the most dangerous enemy is not always the strongest one. Sometimes it's the one you never see coming. Jake Morrison had 1 hour to prepare for the most important battle in human history. A battle that would determine whether humanity would be free or enslaved, whether Earth would survive or burn. The aliens thought they had already won. They were wrong. The council chamber was packed with aliens from all over the galaxy. They'd come to watch what they thought would be humanity's surrender. Admiral Jake Morrison walked into the huge room with Commander Lisa Blake and Lieutenant Carl Peters behind him. Their uniforms were clean and pressed, but Jake could feel the eyes of hundreds of alien beings watching them. The room was circular and very large, with seats rising up in levels like a stadium. At the center was a speaking platform where Jake would have to stand. The lighting was bright and made everything feel important and serious. Counselor Vextel was a tall, reptile-like creature with green scales and yellow eyes. He was in charge of the meeting. He raised one clawed hand and the room became quiet. The human delegation will now speak, Vextel announced. They will give their answer to the Zephyrian demands. Jake walked to the center platform, knowing that every alien in the room was staring at him. The Zephyrian delegation sat in the best seats, close to the front. Admiral Kethfer was lounging in his chair like he was watching entertainment. His crystal skin caught the light and his 4 eyes looked amused. Members of the Galactic Council, Jake began, his voice carrying clearly through the room. 3 months ago, my people learned that we were not alone in the universe. We discovered that our neighbors thought we were primitive and weak. Some of the aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. Jake kept talking without stopping. We were told that our technology was old and useless. We're told that our military was a joke. The Zephyrian Empire demanded that we surrender, believing that their big fleet and fancy weapons would make fighting back impossible. Admiral Kethfer stood up from his seat. His tall body reflected the chamber lights like a prism. Human, you waste our time with speeches. Your ship is surrounded by our fleet. Your world has no defenses. Accept defeat with whatever dignity your species has left. Jake smiled then, and something about that smile made several council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. Admiral Kethfer, you're right about one thing. We are primitive. We still use bullets and explosives. We still build ships from metal. We don't have energy shields or plasma weapons. We don't have hundreds of ships. Then you surrender? Kethfer asked, and his voice sounded like he had already won. No, Jake said simply. We don't surrender. We adapt. The chamber became completely silent. Jake looked around at all the alien faces, seeing confusion and surprise. You see, while your species were making perfect energy weapons and amazing technologies, humanity was learning something different. We learned that the most dangerous hunter isn't always the one with the biggest teeth or the strongest claws. Sometimes, it's the one that nobody expects to be dangerous. Commander Blake stepped forward and activated a holographic display. The image showed the inside of the Harbinger, but there were sections that hadn't been visible when the aliens scanned. The ship before? The USS Harbinger isn't just a warship, Jake continued. It's a delivery system. For 3 months, while your fleets were gathering and your diplomats were writing surrender papers, humanity's smartest people were working on one question. How? Do you defeat an enemy that has more ships and better weapons than you do? The display zoomed in on the ship's center, showing a chamber that contains swirling energy patterns unlike anything in the known galactic databases. The aliens in the chamber began murmuring to each other in their different languages. Answer, Jake said, is that you don't fight them directly, you make them fight themselves. Admiral Kethfer's confidence started to crack. What is that device? Call it the resonance engine, Jake replied. It's based on scientific principles that your advanced civilizations ignored while you were rushing to develop energy weapons. Quantum physics, gravity wave control, and something we humans call thinking outside the box. Lieutenant Peters activated a second display showing the Zephyrian fleet's formation around the space station. Every ship in your fleet uses the same basic technology. Crystal hulls, living computer systems, quantum field generators. You've made your entire civilization use the same technology. This is our strength, Kethfer said, but his voice didn't sound as sure as before. It's your weakness, Jake replied, because when everything is connected, when every system works on the same frequency, when every ship uses the same technology. Foundation, ... double quotes, he paused to let the meaning sink in. One properly tuned pulse can spread through your entire fleet like a disease. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Several council members began checking their translation devices, thinking, they must have misunderstood what the human had said. You're lying, Kethfer said, but his 4 eyes had narrowed with worry. Even if such a weapon existed, it would violate every rule of civilized warfare. The council would never allow... The council, Jake interrupted, is not at war with the Zephyrian Empire. Humanity is. Humanity never agreed to follow your rules. The silence that followed was complete and frightening. Jake looked around the chamber one more time, then stood up straighter. Admiral Kethfer, you have 1 hour to take your fleet out of this system and go back to Zephyrian space. If you refuse, the USS Harbinger will show you why humanity doesn't. Surrender. And if we destroy your ship first? Kethfer demanded. Jake's smile came back, colder than before. Then you'll learn what a dead man's switch is. The aliens in the chamber began talking loudly to each other. Some were scared, others were angry, and many were confused. They had expected to watch a simple surrender ceremony, not hear threats. From a species they thought was helpless, Counselor Vextel tried to restore order. The human delegation will return to their ship. Admiral Kethfer, your response? Kethfer stood tall, his crystal skin flashing with angry colors. We do not negotiate with primitives. We do not bow to threats from inferior species. Zephyrian? Empire has conquered 40 star systems. Will not be stopped by one human ship with impossible claims. Jake nodded like he had expected this answer. Then we understand each other perfectly. As the human delegation left the chamber, the aliens behind them burst into loud arguments. Some wanted to stop the confrontation. Others wanted to see if the humans were bluffing. The Zephyrian representatives were angry and insulted that a primitive species had dared to threaten them. Walking back to their ship, Commander Blake spoke quietly to Jake. Sir, do you think they believed us about the resonance engine? Some did, Jake replied, but not Kethfer. He's too proud and too sure of his technology. He thinks we're bluffing because he can't imagine how primitive humans could create something his advanced civilization couldn't. And if we're wrong? Lieutenant Peters asked. If the engine doesn't work the way the scientists predicted? Jake stopped walking and looked at his two officers. They were good people who trusted him with their lives. They deserved an honest answer. Then we die, he said simply. But we die fighting, and maybe that will inspire other species to resist the Zephyrian Empire. Sometimes that's all you can do. They reached the Harbinger and went aboard. Around them, the alien fleet was moving into attack position. The beautiful crystal ships were preparing their weapons, getting ready to destroy the ugly human vessel that had dared to threaten them. Jake went to the bridge and sat in his command chair. In less than an hour, he would find out if 3 months of human science and engineering could defeat thousands of years of alien technology. The galaxy was about to change forever. The only question was whether humanity would survive to see it. The hour passed slowly on the bridge of the Harbinger. Admiral Jake Morrison stood watching the tactical display as the Zephyrian fleet moved closer to the space station. Instead of leaving like he had demanded, Admiral Kethfer had brought his ships into attack formation. Their weapons were glowing bright red and all pointed at the human ship. Sir Lieutenant Carl Peters said from his station, "The alien flagship is calling us. Put him on the screen." Admiral Kethfer appeared on the main display. His crystal face was reflecting red light from his ship's weapon systems. Behind him, Jake could see other alien officers preparing for battle. "Human Admiral, your time is up," Kethfer announced. "I have talked with my fleet commanders, and we have all agreed on what to do next." Jake waited without speaking. He could feel the tension from his crew as they watched the alien commander. "We think you are lying," Kethfer continued. "Our scientists have looked at your crude ship and found no sign of this supposed weapon. Call the resonance engine. Even if such a thing existed, no primitive species could have built technology beyond our understanding in just 3 months." "I see," Jake said calmly. "And what will you do about it?" "We will destroy your ship slowly, piece by piece, so that your death teaches a lesson to any other species that might think about fighting the Zephyrian Empire. Your sacrifice will show the galaxy that resistance is useless." The screen went dark. Kethfer had ended the transmission to prepare for attack. Jake turned to his crew and saw the fear and determination in their faces. They were good people who had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might never see home again. Commander Blake, seal the bridge. Lieutenant Peters, turn on the resonance engine. All crew members, prepare for battle. As the bridge doors locked and the ship's systems switched to combat mode, Jake spoke directly to his crew. "I want everyone to understand what we're about to do. The resonance engine isn't just a weapon, it's something that will change how wars are fought forever. If we succeed, warfare as the galaxy knows, it will never be the same." Commander Lisa Blake moved to the weapons control station. Her hands moved over controls that hadn't been there when the ship was inspected by alien observers. "Sir, the engine is starting up.
Ow.
The quantum systems are stable, and the gravity wave generators are working together."
Good.
Peters, open a communication. "Channel 2, all ships in the Zephyrian fleet." "Channel open, sir." Jake's voice carried through space to every vessel in the enemy formation. "Admiral Kethfer, this is your last warning. Take your fleet away from here immediately, or face what happens next." The aliens didn't answer with words. Instead, the Zephyrian flagship fired its main weapon. A beam of pure energy shot toward the Harbinger. The human ship's metal armor glowed white-hot where the blast hit, but the vessel stayed in one piece. "Minor damage to outer hull," Peters reported. "They're aiming for our engines next." "Let them try," Jake said calmly. "Commander Blake, do we have a lock on their fleet frequency?" "Yes, sir. All 200 ships are using the same quantum signature for communication. The engine has mapped their entire network." Jake walked to the center of the bridge. Next to his captain's chair was a simple red button that had been installed 3 days ago. It looked almost too ordinary for something that would change galactic history. "Open one more channel," he ordered. "I want Kethfer to hear this." communication system crackled to life. Admiral Kethfer, you wanted to know what humanity learned during our 3 months of preparation? We learned that advanced civilizations become too confident. They trust their technology so much that they forget to ask simple questions. Another energy beam hit the Harbinger, this time targeting the ship's weapon systems. The human vessels shook, but stayed in position. Questions like, what happens when all your ships are connected through quantum communication arrays? What happens when your living computer systems share the same genetic code? What happens when your crystal holes all vibrate at the same frequency? Could hear the worry in Kethfer's voice when he responded. You're lying. No weapon could affect an entire fleet at the same time. You're right, Jake replied. No weapon could do that. But this isn't a weapon, Admiral. It's a tuning fork. Jake pressed the red button. The resonance engine, hidden deep inside the Harbinger's hull, created a pulse that existed in multiple dimensions at once. The pulse traveled through quantum space, following the connection threads that linked every ship in the Zephyrian fleet together. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The alien ships continued to float in their formation, weapons still glowing and ready to fire. Then, like a musical note that starts quiet and gets louder, the enemy ships began to shake. The first sign appeared on the Zephyrian flagship's bridge. Admiral Kethfer was ordering another attack on the Harbinger, when his ship's crystal hull started to vibrate with a low humming sound. What is that noise? He demanded, his 4 eyes looking at the control panels around him. Unknown, sir, his weapons officer reported. Our hull strength is changing. The vibration is spreading through the entire ship. For the first time, Kethfer looked worried instead of confident. Spread out the fleet. Break formation now. But it was too late. The resonance engine's pulse had already traveled through the quantum networks that connected every ship in the fleet. The frequency was perfectly matched to the crystal structure that formed the backbone of all Zephyrian technology. On the Harbinger's bridge, Commander Blake watched the tactical display with amazement. Sir, it's working. The resonance is spreading through their entire formation. Hull integrity is dropping on all enemy ships. Jake nodded, but his face was serious. How long until their ships start breaking apart? At the current rate, about 7 minutes until complete structural failure. The vibration is getting stronger as it spreads through their quantum networks. Lieutenant Peters looked up from his station, his face pale. Sir, we're getting emergency calls from multiple Zephyrian ships. They're asking us to stop the attack. Put Admiral Kethfer back on screen, Jake ordered. The main display showed the Zephyrian flagship's bridge. Sparks were flying from damaged equipment, and the hull's vibration was now loud enough to hear. The crystal walls were starting to crack. Human! Kethfer shouted over the noise. Stop this now! This violates every rule of civilized warfare. Admiral, Jake replied calmly, you shot at us first. We're defending ourselves. Our ships are falling apart. The vibration is breaking the molecular bonds in our hull crystals. This is mass murder. Jake's expression became hard. 3 months ago, you demanded that my entire species surrender. You threatened to destroy Earth and make humanity into slaves. You brought 200 ships to intimidate one. Now you want to talk about the rules of war? The vibration on the Zephyrian flagship was getting worse. Kethfer had to yell to be heard over the growing harmonic chaos. Equipment was exploding and the ceiling was starting to crack. We surrender. We formally surrender. Please make it stop. Commander Blake, Jake said without looking away from the screen. Can we stop the resonance? Negative, sir. The vibration has reached critical mass. It's sustaining itself now. The quantum networks are making the effects stronger beyond our control. Jake felt a moment of real regret. He had hoped to disable the fleet, not destroy it completely. But the Zephyrians' own technology had made their ships too connected, too dependent on the same frequencies that were now tearing them apart. Admiral Kethfer, Jake said formally, order all your ships to abandon ship. Begin emergency evacuation procedures right now. You don't understand, Kethfer replied, his image flickering as his ship's systems failed. Our escape pods use the same crystal technology. They're vibrating apart too. We're trapped on dying ships. The full meaning hit Jake like a physical blow. The resonance engine had been designed to disable ships, not kill crews. But the Zephyrians had made their entire technology dependent. On the same principles that were now destroying them, the galaxy was about to witness the most decisive battle in its history. And Jake Morrison was beginning to understand the true cost of victory. The vibration that started on Admiral Kethfer's flagship quickly spread to every ship in the Zephyrian fleet. What began as a small tremor became a violent shaking that made the crystal hulls ring like giant bells. On the bridge of the Harbinger, Admiral Jake Morrison watched his tactical display as red warning lights appeared across the entire enemy formation. "Sir," Commander Lisa Blake called out, her voice tight with worry. "The resonance is spreading faster than we calculated. Their quantum communication networks are amplifying the effect beyond what our scientists predicted." Jake felt his stomach drop. The resonance engine had been designed to disable ships, not destroy them completely. But the Zephyrians had built their technology in a way that made every ship connected to every other ship. Now that connection was becoming their death sentence. On the main screen, Admiral Kethfer was holding onto his command chair as his bridge shook violently. Crystal panels were cracking, and sparks flew from damaged equipment. The beautiful alien technology that had seemed so advanced was now falling apart. "What have you done to us?" Kethfer shouted over the growing noise. His 4 eyes were wide. With fear and confusion, "Our ships are tearing themselves apart." "I'm trying to stop it," Jake replied. But even as he spoke, he knew it was too late. "Commander Blake, can we shut down the engine?" "Negative, sir. The resonance has reached what our scientists call critical mass. It's feeding on itself now, getting stronger as it spreads through their fleet's quantum networks." Lieutenant Carl Peters looked up from his station, his face pale. "Sir, I'm reading structural failures on multiple ships. The vibration is breaking. Apart the molecular bonds in their crystal hulls." Jake watched in horror as the first Zephyrian ship began to crack. The beautiful vessel that had looked like a work of art was now splitting down the middle like a broken glass. Atmosphere and debris poured out of the growing cracks. "All Zephyrian ships, this is Admiral Morrison, Jake. Broadcast on all frequencies. Begin immediate evacuation procedures. Abandon ship now. This is not a request, it's an order to save your lives." But even as he gave the order, Jake realized the terrible truth. The Zephyrians had made their escape pods and life support systems. Using the same crystal technology as their ships, the resonance was affecting everything they had built. On his screen, Kethfer was being thrown around his bridge as the flagship shook harder. "Our escape pods are failing too," he said, his voice filled with despair. "The resonance is in everything. We're trapped on dying ships." Jake made a decision that would define the rest of his life. "All hands, prepare for emergency rescue operations. Strip out everything non-essential from our cargo bays. We're going to save as many of them as we can." "Sir," Blake said in surprise, "these are enemy soldiers. They came here to destroy us." "They're people," Jake replied firmly. "And people don't deserve to die like this." The first Zephyrian ship exploded in a shower of crystal fragments and escaping gases. The blast lit up space like a deadly firework, and Jake knew that hundreds of crew members had just died. More ships were beginning to show critical damage. As the resonance tore through their hulls, "Launch all shuttles," Jake ordered. "Every pilot we have, every small craft that can carry people. Move fast and save whoever you can." The Harbinger's shuttle bay doors opened, and small rescue craft shot out into space. They looked tiny against the massive alien warships, but they moved with purpose toward the nearest failing vessels. Human pilots who had been preparing for battle were now racing to save enemy lives. "Shuttle 1 to Harbinger," came the voice of Lieutenant Bobby Martinez over the radio. "I'm docking with the cruiser Knight's Promise. They've got about 300 crew members who need immediate evacuation." "Copy that, Martinez. Get as many as you can and bring them home." Jake opened a communication channel to the entire system. "This is Admiral Morrison of the Earth ship Harbinger. We are conducting emergency rescue operations for Zephyrian survivors. Any vessel capable of assisting, please respond." The first to answer was Captain Ellen Rodriguez of the Altarian medical ship Healing Light. Admiral Morrison, we're moving to assist. Our ship can handle alien physiology, and we have space for about 1,000 survivors. More voices joined in. Council transport ships, merchant vessels, even some alien warships whose governments had been enemies of the Zephyrians offered to help. In the face of mass death, old conflicts seemed less important than saving lives.
Sir.
Peters reported. We're getting distress signals from escape pods throughout the area. The pods are failing too, but some crew members managed to get into emergency suits before their ships broke apart. Direct all rescue teams to prioritize those floating in space, Jake ordered. They have the least protection and the least time. Human. Shuttle pilot Sarah Kim's voice came over the radio, strained with effort. Harbinger, this is Shuttle 5. I've got 40 Zephyrian survivors on board, but some of them are badly injured. Their crystal skin is cracking from the vibration exposure. Bring them to Medical Bay 2, Jake replied. Dr. Williams has been studying Zephyrian physiology. She know how to help them. The rescue operation continued as more ships exploded around them. The beautiful Zephyrian fleet that had entered this system with such confidence was being destroyed by their own technology. But human pilots kept flying rescue missions, pulling survivors from the wreckage and bringing them to safety. Admiral Kethfer's flagship was one of the last ships to fail. When the human shuttle finally reached him, the proud alien commander was barely conscious. The violent shaking had thrown him around his bridge, and his crystal skin was fractured in several places. Why, Kethfer asked weakly as human medics loaded him onto a stretcher. Why are you saving us? Came here to destroy you. Because it's what humans do, replied Chief Petty Officer Danny Walsh, the medic treating him. We help people in trouble, even if they're our enemies. Hours passed before the last rescue shuttle returned to the Harbinger. The ship's cargo bays had been converted into refugee camps, filled with Zephyrian survivors who looked around in confusion and fear. They had expected to die in the vacuum of space, but instead, they were being treated by the same humans they had come to conquer. Jake walked through the makeshift refugee areas, seeing alien faces that showed gratitude mixed with shame. These soldiers had followed orders to intimidate and destroy humanity, but now they owed their lives to human compassion. Final count, sir, Commander Blake reported. We saved 28,412 Zephyrian crew members. The other ships in the rescue operation saved about 6,000 more. Total survivors, 34,412. Jake nodded, but felt no satisfaction. And the losses. Approximately 5,588 killed when their ships exploded or their escape systems failed. Nearly 6,000 people dead because of a weapon he had ordered to be fired. Jake knew he would carry that weight for the rest of his life, but he also knew that without the rescue operation, all 40,000 would have died. The debris field that had once been the galaxy's most powerful fleet drifted silently in space. The Zephyrian Empire's military might had been broken in a single battle, and the survivors were now refugees, dependent on the mercy of the species they had tried to destroy. The galaxy would never be the same. And neither would Jake Morrison, who had learned that sometimes the greatest victory comes with the heaviest price. 2 weeks had passed since the battle that changed the galaxy forever. USS Harbinger was finally heading back to Earth, carrying 34,000 Zephyrian survivors who had become refugees in the space of a single day. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in what used to be Cargo Bay 3, now converted into a temporary living area for the aliens. The Zephyrians sat quietly on simple cots and benches that the human crew had built for them. Their crystal skin, once bright and beautiful, was now dull and cracked from the trauma they had experienced. Many still bore injuries from when their ships fell apart around them. Human doctors and medics moved among them, providing care and comfort to beings who had been their enemies just weeks before. Admiral Kethfer sat on a medical bed near the back of the bay. His 4 eyes followed Jake as the human admiral approached. The proud Zephyrian commander who had once threatened to destroy Earth now looked tired and broken. Admiral Morrison, Kethfer said, struggling to stand up. I have been waiting to speak with you. Please don't stand, Jake said, gesturing for the alien to remain seated. How are your injuries healing? My body will recover, Cathver replied. But my understanding of the universe has been completely destroyed and rebuilt. He looked around at his fellow survivors, many of whom were talking quietly with human crew members. We came here believing we were superior beings, bringing order to primitive species. We leave knowing we were the primitive ones. Jake pulled up a nearby chair and sat down. For the past 2 weeks he had spoken with many of the Zephyrian survivors, learning about their culture and their history. What he had discovered was both fascinating and troubling. Your people aren't primitive, Jake said. You're just different. You focused on perfection, while we focused on adaptation. Both approaches have their strengths and weaknesses, but your approach won, Cathver pointed out. One human ship defeated our entire fleet, not through superior firepower or better armor, but through superior thinking. Commander Lisa Blake approached them, carrying a data tablet with the latest reports from across the galaxy. Sir, we're receiving updates from the Galactic Council. The news about our victory has spread to every star system. Jake took the tablet and read through the messages. The response was exactly what he had expected and feared. Some species were offering alliance treaties with humanity. Others were demanding immediate peace negotiations. Few were, apparently, building their own versions of the resonance engine, hoping to level the playing field. What does it say about the Zephyrian Empire? Cathver asked quietly. Jake's expression grew serious. Your government has fallen. 3 colony worlds have declared independence. The core planets are requesting immediate ceasefire agreements. Your military command structure has collapsed. Cathver nodded sadly. I expected as much. When word spread that our entire fleet was destroyed by a single human ship, it destroyed more than our military power. It destroyed our people's faith in Zephyrian superiority. What will you do when we reach Earth? Jake asked. Request political asylum, Cathver replied. Most of my people will do the same. We cannot return to the Empire. You're living proof of its failure. But more than that, we have seen something here that our civilization forgot long ago. What's that? Mercy, Cathver said simply. You defeated us completely. But when we were dying, you saved us. When we were your prisoners, you treated us as guests. When we needed medical care, you gave it freely. The Zephyrian Empire would never have shown such compassion to defeated enemies. Jake felt uncomfortable with the praise. We did what any decent people would do. No, Cathver said firmly. You did what humans do, and that makes all the difference. Lieutenant Carl Peters approached with another communication tablet. Sir, we're receiving a priority message from Earth Command. Admiral Chen wants to speak. With you immediately, Jake stood up and nodded to Cathver. Excuse me, Admiral. Duty calls. Walked to a quiet corner of the cargo bay and activated the secure communication link. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen, her expression serious but not unfriendly. Jake, she said without preamble, the entire planet is calling you a hero. The news networks are running stories about humanity's first military victory against an alien empire. The politicians are making speeches about human superiority and our destiny among the stars. You're worried about what comes next, Jake? Said, understanding the subtext. Damn right, I'm worried. We've gone from being unknown primitives to being the most feared military power in the galaxy in the span of 2 weeks. Every species out there is either trying to ally with us or preparing to fight us. The balance of power has completely shifted. Jake looked back at the Zephyrian refugees, many of whom were now helping human crew members with various tasks around the ship. What are your orders, Admiral? When you get back to Earth, you're going to be promoted and given command of the new space defense fleet. The government wants to build 100 ships like the Harbinger, each one equipped with resonance engines. And if I refuse the promotion? Admiral. Chen's expression softened slightly. Then you'll be quietly reassigned to a desk job, and someone else will take your place. Jake, I know what this cost you. I know you're carrying the weight of those 5,000 deaths. But the galaxy has changed, and we need leaders who understand the responsibility that comes with this kind of power. Jake closed his eyes for a moment, thinking about the choice he was facing. He could accept the promotion and help guide humanity's new role in galactic affairs, trying to ensure that human power was used responsibly, or He could walk away and leave that responsibility to others who might not share his moral concerns. "I'll take the promotion," he said finally. "But I want guarantees that the resonance engine technology will be strictly controlled. I want full amnesty for all Zephyrian refugees who request asylum on Earth." "Agreed," Admiral Chen replied. "The President is already preparing a speech about human compassion and our commitment to helping war refugees. It's good politics and good public relations." After the communication ended, Jake returned to where Kethfer was sitting. The alien admiral was watching a group of human and Zephyrian children playing together near the medical station. Some of the refugees had brought their families on what was supposed to be a routine intimidation mission. "They adapt quickly," Kethfer observed. "The children, I mean. They don't see enemies and allies the way adults do. They just see other children to play with." "Maybe that's what the galaxy needs," Jake said. "A generation that grows up seeing diversity as strength instead of weakness. Perhaps. But first, the current generation needs to learn from what happened here." Kethfer turned to face Jake directly. "Admiral Morrison, I want to work with your people. I want to help design new technologies that are diverse and adaptable instead of uniform and vulnerable. I want to ensure that no species ever again builds the kind of systemic weakness that destroyed my fleet." Jake extended his hand, and after a moment of hesitation, Kethfer took it. The handshake between the human admiral and the defeated alien commander represented something new in galactic relations. The possibility that former enemies could become partners in building a better future. "Welcome to the human way of doing things," Jake said with a slight smile. "It's messy and complicated, but it works." As the Harbinger continued its journey toward Earth, carrying the survivors of a broken empire and the crew of a ship that had changed history, Jake Morrison reflected on what they had accomplished. They had won a battle through superior tactics and technology. But they had won something more important through superior values. The galaxy would remember the day that humanity destroyed the Zephyrian fleet with a single ship, but Jake hoped they would also remember the day that humanity chose to save their enemies instead of letting them die. That choice, it more than any weapon, would define humanity's place among the stars.